If I seem a little tired, perhaps it is because I am. We had our annual parish festival a week ago, and it takes about a month to recover from it. It was our 33rd annual Oktoberfest in July. It was a good one. We only had one arrest this year. And it was. And I was very generous. I donated $20 to the Instant Bingo on Friday night, and God gives back. When we give to God, God gives back, because Saturday morning I was walking through the parish grounds. You could imagine what they looked like, and right there on the sidewalk in front of the front doors of the church was $150. Yes, there was. Unfortunately for me, it was in the form of a check. And evidently, one of the accordion players from one of the polka bands dropped his check that the head of the polka band, Hank Haller, and his Happy Canadians or something, that was the polka band. Well, I do want to share some personal information. I'm the third of 9 children. It all started for me, my stewardship journey, back on a very cold and snowy morning on December 29th, my birthday, 1952, in East Cleveland, Ohio. And I grew up on the east side of Cleveland in a suburb called Euclid. And third of 9 children, very loving parents and brothers and sisters. We all get along. My parents have been dead now for a few years. And I had 2 aunts that are Ursuline nuns, one of whom is still alive, and lived just a block down the street from the parish. And so we were very much involved in our parish and going to daily Mass and serving Mass and all the other activities of growing up in the 1950s and 60s in just about any parish in the United States. I'm pastor of Immaculate Conception in Willoughby. It's a town about 20 miles east of Cleveland along the shores of Lake Erie. And I arrived there in February of 2004. We have about 1,900 households now. We've lost several hundred households over the last few years for various reasons, one of which is we were told to merge our school with a neighboring parish school, and the site of the new school is not our site. And so that creates a bit of a deflation in the parish, I guess we would call it. And it's something that we're constantly working on, is promoting our interparochial school and making sure people realize that this is our school, even though it's not on our property. So that's what we're doing. I also came to the same conference that Father Dave Zimmer came to in March of 2005. I came with our business manager because our school was costing us a lot of money. We were eating up our savings with $500,000, and some years more than that, surplus to our school. And so we heard about this conference through the grapevine, and we decided to come to it to help save our school. And I have to say, what happened to us was amazing, because after the first morning, both of us realized, we kind of turned to each other in amazement and said the same thing. Both of us realized that stewardship is not about fundraising, it's about faith raising. That's what it's about. And so we really were taken in by the whole conference, and we went back to our parish, I say kind of like Paul and Barnabas, and first we talked to was the staff, some of whom were very receptive. 1 or 2 of them weren't really. I guess they didn't understand it very well. And we talked to the parish council, the finance council. We talked to various groups of the parish about our experience in Wichita and the way of life in parishes in the Diocese of Wichita, and how we'd like to be that kind of a parish too. And so our people, I want to say, they were very open to that idea. It was kind of the opposite of what Father Dave experienced in his parish. And we began on May 1st, I remember, 2005, asking Catholic stewardship consultants to help us out and to form stewardship as a way of life in our parish. And it's been an excellent relationship these past 7 years in working with them. You know, I've come to realize over the years that stewardship, the real heart of stewardship, is our faith. It's our discipleship in Jesus. You can almost distill that word stewardship down to other one-word descriptions. One is discipleship. And I'm very glad that our bishop sees that connection between discipleship and stewardship. When he first came to the diocese 5 years ago, the first thing he did was form a stewardship commission, a stewardship office for the diocese. And I also found out he doesn't like parishes calling themselves a stewardship parish because he says every parish is a stewardship parish. And if they don't think so, they ought to be. So we have good support on a diocesan level for living stewardship as a way of life. But discipleship is that one word, because I say stewardship is discipleship. It's the way that we follow Jesus as Americans living in the 21st century, as Canadians also. And as Christians, that's how we follow Jesus. Another one-word description is generosity. A steward is someone who is generous. In Spanish, they don't have a word that sounds like or that translates into stewardship. Instead, they use the word corresponsabilidad, co-responsibility. And that gives you a real insight into that word stewardship, that it isn't associated with raising money, as it's been pointed out. That's how we as Catholics in the United States have been using that word stewardship for many decades, is in regard to fundraisers and capital campaigns. Co-responsibility. Who do I have the co-responsibility with or for? With God. It's our relationship with God, of receiving from God and then giving back to God. It's the same love relationship between husband and wife, of receiving and giving, receiving and giving. That's what we're dealing with. I've come to realize that it certainly isn't a program, but it is a way of life. And it's not so much things you do. And I say that realizing the first few years I was very much concerned about the mechanics and getting all the mechanics down of implementing stewardship in the parish. But it really isn't something that you do, but rather how you do something in your parish, how you do everything in your parish. That's what we're really talking about, is how we're doing things, because it's going to be with us forever and ever. Discipleship is with us until Jesus comes again. So I want to say a little bit about how we did get things going from 2005 on, when we had our first stewardship renewal that fall in October. We began by forming a stewardship committee in the parish, which was kind of sketchy for the first year or so, and the people that I chose, I didn't choose the most enthusiastic people, I guess, by and large. We began a monthly newsletter in the month of July, and we've continued that every month since then, and it's actually improved in certain ways, and it's very readable. When we take surveys, over 90% say they read it, and they read all of it. It's a very good newsletter. We had a retreat in August for parish leadership, which was very well attended. I believe that first year we had over 80 people at the retreat, and it was very well received. And then we began our renewal process, which it was a 3-Sunday process of the pastor talking at all the masses. The next Sunday we had a lay witness as part of all the masses, and then the third Sunday we actually have people bring their stewardship card that they received in the mail, a stewardship commitment card, along with other materials. We have them bring that to church and fill it out in church if they haven't filled it out yet, and then everyone puts it in the offertory basket, and it's brought up along with our monetary offerings at all of those masses as part of our stewardship renewal. And our first year was very good. It was very successful. Our offertory went up 25%, and we were able to sustain that for a few years. Our commitments for time, for prayer time, our prayer commitments were very high. But the parish, it already was a stewardship parish in many ways, I guess I want to say, that there were a lot of good things already going on. We had a perpetual adoration chapel in place since 1986, so already for almost 20 years by the time we started our stewardship process. And then also the biggest increase, and the most noticeable change in the parish, though, was with the commitments of talent. Because we had over 125 people who committed to 2 or more ministries, and these 125 plus people had never been involved in anything in the parish before. They came to Mass on Sunday for the most part, but that was the extent of their participation in the life of our parish, was coming to Mass. Well, now all of a sudden we have another 125 volunteers who actively want to volunteer. And that was a real blessing and a real challenge at the same time to work with. A few people took the time to call me, and one even made an appointment. She was kind of gruff with me on the phone. She said, I want to come in and talk to you about this stewardship thing. So I prepared for the worst. And she came in. I always prepare for the worst somehow. She came in to see me, and I said, well, what can I help you with? And she said, you know, Father, I signed up for the 3 things with this stewardship stuff that we're doing. And I says, and what happened? Somebody didn't call you back? And she said, no, that's just it. 3 different people called me back. And the thing is, I've been a parishioner here for 17 years. And in the past, there have been notices in the bulletin like we need volunteers for a PSR, or we need volunteers for something else. And I've called the rectory to volunteer, but nobody ever called me back. But this time, 3 people did. And I just want to tell you that for the first time in 17 years, I feel like I'm a real parishioner. And that's really how we started. That it really did impact so many people in a very good and positive way. We emphasize with the ministry leaders, who are the ones doing the callbacks after somebody volunteers, that the cardinal sin of stewardship is not calling someone back. And I have to tell you, after about 6 weeks, my nephew and his wife were in church. They were parishioners at the time. And I said to them, did you guys volunteer for anything? Did you sign up for any ministries? And he says, yeah, I'm going to be a Eucharistic minister. And my niece-in-law, or whatever you're supposed to call her, she said, oh, I signed up for the preschool, but nobody called me back. And I said, what? The pastor's niece-in-law did not get a call back? So I went to the office the next day, and I saw our business manager, who was coordinating with the ministry leaders the callbacks, and I said, I can't believe that my nephew's wife didn't get called back for volunteering for the preschool. And I said, can you find out who was supposed to give her a call? And I'm going to give her a call myself. So he looked up the list, and he gave me the name of the parishioner. Jan, who was in charge of the preschool, was supposed to call her back. So he gives her a call, and he says, Father Troha is really angry because his niece-in-law didn't get a call back for volunteering. Can you look up and see what you did for her? So she got her list out, and he could hear her over the phone saying, Troha, Troha, Troha. Yes, right here it says, called and left message with husband. So at that point, I realized the grace of the sacrament of marriage does not include giving messages to your spouse. Am I right? Am I right? Is that true? Okay. Well, the thing is, our parish did have several organizations and ministries, but they were kind of stuck in their old ways. It wasn't a very inviting atmosphere. I remember my first day driving onto the property. I didn't know where I was supposed to go because there were no signs other than a big sign out front that said Immaculate Conception Church. I didn't know where any of the buildings were. Nothing was marked. Before I came to the parish, the bishop told me, I want you to start a parish council there along the lines of our policies for the Diocese of Cleveland. And I didn't know what he really meant by that till I went to the first parish council meeting, which was kind of like a mini town hall meeting. There were 25 people in the room who went around the room complaining about whatever they didn't like in the parish. I don't know what that had to do with a parish council. And so after a couple of months, I said, boy, this isn't going to work. But I wanted to organize the new parish council. not right away, but after at least a few months of see who's going to be coming around and who's already involved. And I brought up the idea that, it'd be good if we had something for hospitality in the parish. We didn't have anything for hospitality, really. And they said, well, what do you mean? And I said, we could have coffee and donuts one Sunday after all the masses, one Sunday a month. And somebody said, well, that's going to cost money. And I says, yeah, but we have enough money to cover it. And, we have about $2 million in savings. I think we can handle coffee and donuts. And they said, well, who's going to come to it? And I said, well, that always is a gamble, but I've been to various communities, being in the Air Force chaplain and other parishes, and it seems to me people really do like coffee and donuts, and I think maybe if we try it, people will come. And they said, well, why do you think we have to do it? I said, well, it gives people a chance to talk and get to meet each other and get to know people. We know everybody in the parish. And I said, you do? And they says, yes. I said, well, I don't. I hardly know anybody in the parish, and I'm new, and I think there's some other new people, so maybe we should try it. And I said, I'll tell you what, let's try it for 6 months. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to not having any coffee and donuts. So they reluctantly agreed. And now, if we somehow want to change the date or cancel it, you get phone calls complaining because it's like a sacred day. But actually, we have hospitality after every Sunday now because we were able to renovate one of the former classroom areas into a hall. Well, it's a long story. But anyways, we do better at that. But the thing is, we really did want to emphasize hospitality, because it is so crucial. When I sign up new people for the parish, I ask them, because many of them aren't from our territory. I guess territories don't matter much these days, where you have a lot of parishes still in geographic areas. And I say, why do you want to join our parish? And they all give me this, honestly, they all give me the same answer. They say, well, we've gone to Mass at other parishes, but this parish is the friendliest, which I'm very happy that that's the impression we're giving, because that's the impression we're trying to give. That's one of the things that immediately came out of our stewardship committee, was to do things for hospitality. They too, they saw like the Msgr McGread video, and some of them had been to stewardship conferences in the diocese, and so they were in agreement that we did need to work on hospitality. And what came out of that were greeters at the masses, which is really a great thing to do. I'm sure many of you do that already. We also had a group that welcomed new parishioners. And then we also had a group that was kind of the socials, that worked on parish socials and getting different kind of socials to appeal to different age groups, to get people together and get people talking. One of the other good things that came out of our stewardship renewal in the first few years was that the message of being active in our faith and making an adult commitment to give back to God from the time He has given us by making prayer commitments, by making commitments of our talents, by making commitments of our financial treasure. The idea of using our talents to build up the parish community or the local community really hit home. And so people felt, I guess I'd say, welcome to come and talk to me about starting a new ministry. And some of those new ministries that were started were very good ones that are still very active. One was a man who had worked with the mentally and physically challenged in Lake County and then in Cuyahoga County, where Cleveland is, for over 30 years. And he said, I'm really good at this, and I'd like to do something like this for our parish. So he started a ministry called Building Church, Welcoming All. And it helped us to really revamp our whole parish church structure so that it's handicapped accessible, which it wasn't in any way. And even the inside of where to put the open areas for wheelchairs and handicapped seating and so on, so that people weren't shoved off to the side but had prominent places, within the congregation. And they do some other things to spread awareness of disabilities, like a Disability Sunday that has different exhibits and things. And that was using his talents in a very creative and good way to help out the rest of us. One of the nurses came to me and said she thinks we should have a wellness ministry. And I said, well, would you be willing to start? And she said, sure. Well, it's like every retired nurse and active nurse in the parish came out of the woodwork. I didn't know we had so many nurses. And they did several things, but one thing that they still do regularly is blood pressure checks. And I was very grateful for that because I was the first one, I was the guinea pig that had his blood pressure checked, and the very nice nurse said, "Father, you have high blood pressure." And I said, "That's impossible. I was captain of the JV football team. I've run 5 marathons. It was over 20 years ago, but I couldn't possibly have high blood pressure." Well, she said, "You do." So I didn't believe her. And then 2 weeks later, I had my blood pressure checked again, and it was just as high. And so one of the doctors in the parish said, "Father, you shouldn't ignore that. It really is the silent killer, just like we say it is." So I did see my doctor, and I've been on blood pressure medication ever since then. But it's their fault because it's such a stressful job being pastor. It is. It's ruined my health there. I've cracked 4 molars by grinding my teeth. And when I first arrived at the parish in 2004, I had a full head of lush black hair. They called me Father Fabio when I first came here. They did. But look at me now. Just what we do for the church. There is a very successful businessman from the parish who said, I'm good at, I interview people all the time and so on. And he said I could help people out by teaching them what to do for an interview. So he has a career path ministry that he still meets with people on a one-on-one basis and gives of his time to help with that. And then 5 years ago, I remember it well, it was April of 2007, right after Easter, one of the parishioners, his name is Marty Hughes, he had been involved with the St. Vincent de Paul Society. And he came up to me, he wanted to meet with me, so I met with him in the rectory, and he said, "Father, I want to start a Society of Mother Teresa." And I said, "You do?" And he says, "Yes." And I said, "Well, what is that?" I thought maybe it's something going around that other parishes have I never heard about. And he said, "Well, it's going to be a society of